Morning, and welcome back to Bible Break, where we've just got down from the Mount of Transfiguration to the scene, as it were, that is there to greet Jesus and the three at the bottom of the of the mount, as ministry. It is clear is resumed in the most challenging of situations and circumstances. So let's get straight on with it. We're in Mark chapter 9, and we're going to read from verse 14 through to verse 29. Mark 9, 14 to 29. Here we go. Reading from the NIV as usual. The healing of a boy with an evil spirit is the subheading which I have in my Bible. When they came to the other disciples, that is, when Jesus and the three came to the other disciples, they saw a large crowd around them and the teachers of the law arguing with them. As soon as all the people saw Jesus, they were overwhelmed with wonder and ran to greet him. "What are you arguing with them about?" he asked. A man in the crowd answered, "Teacher, I brought you my son, who is possessed by a spirit that has robbed him of speech. Whenever it seizes him, it throws him to the ground. He foams at the mouth, gnashes his teeth, and becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to drive out the spirit, but they could not." Well, it sounds a little bit like, I don't know if I'm right with the diagnosis in modern terms, but it's certainly a seizure that the child has. I don't know whether it sounds a bit like epilepsy, what he's got. "Oh, unbelieving generation," Jesus replied, "how long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring the boy to me." So this is interesting. There is no particular stigma that Jesus attaches to the poor, possibly epileptic boy, but the stigma in this situation attaches to everybody, because the problem, whether it's epilepsy or demon possession, clearly it's put in terms of demon possession here, but the problem is unbelief. That's the problem that comes out at the heart of this reading, our unbelief. Well, let's carry on. We're in verse 20, I think. So they brought the boy. Now, when the spirit saw Jesus, it immediately threw the boy into a convulsion. He fell to the ground and rolled around, foaming at the mouth. Jesus asked the boy's father, "How long has he been like this?" "From childhood," he answered. "It has often thrown him into fire or water to kill him. But if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us." "If you can," said Jesus. Everything is possible for him who believes. Immediately the boy's father exclaimed, "I do believe. Help me overcome my unbelief." That question of degree, you see again. When Jesus saw that a crowd was running to the scene, he rebuked the evil spirit. "You deaf and dumb spirit," he said, "I command you, come out of him and never enter him again." The spirit shrieked, convulsed him violently, and came out. The boy looked so much like a corpse that many said, "He's dead." But Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him to his feet, and he stood up. After Jesus had gone indoors, his disciples asked him privately, "Why couldn't we drive it out?" He replied, "This kind can come out only by prayer." And my note on the bottom says that some manuscripts say by prayer and fasting. But either way, the fasting, of course, would be to reinforce the prayer. It would not be a sort of virtuous practice, as it were, in and of itself to get brownie points with God. Well, I don't know about you. I mean, obviously, this isn't the first story in the Gospel of Mark or in any of the other Gospels that we would read on the subject of demon possession. And in many ways, I find this to be the most challenging thing in the Bible. As I say, it appears to me that at least some of the things that we read about in the Bible to do with demon possession, to do with chasing demons, chasing them out, rebuking them and chasing them out, that the diagnosis and we see something of Jesus' own, if I could call it, bedside manner or spirit of consultation in this reading, where Jesus asks the boy's father, "How long has he been like this?" It's the kind of question that a doctor might ask you in his surgery. And so often when we look at these stories of people being healed of their possession, we scratch our heads in this modern age and we wonder what it is that of which they are possessed, because I suppose we would have tendency today to diagnose and describe these situations in psychological terms. And as I say, we might be tempted to see here epilepsy, pure and simple, on display, with the seizures, the violent jerks of the body, the foaming at the mouth. Be that as it may, like I say, I find, quite frankly, like the disciples themselves, I find stories like this in the Gospels to be, in many ways, the most challenging. And for the sake of decorum and for the sake of maintaining the status quo and not causing too much of a stir, I, like you probably, am more inclined to do the kind of thing that the disciples do, or do here, which is to engage in discussion with other people, the teachers, it says here, the scribes, as to as to what the situation is, why we can't do very much about it, and really that is the point, isn't it? That so much of what passes for life and for ministry and for work is nothing of the sort. It's just a question of chewing the fat around the issue, as opposed to dealing with the issue itself. And Jesus has a far more summary approach. I suppose it's the same in everyday life and in situations and in politics, for example, as well. You know, where you've got people who prefer to skirt around the issue, prefer to sort of maintain the status quo, and don't actually like it if somebody comes along who is effective, somebody comes along who can do something, and is prepared not to engage with them and with their discussion, but rather is more inclined to summarily deal with the problem. And that, of course, is the contrast between Jesus, not just Jesus and the disciples, but Jesus and what Jesus himself describes as the unbelieving generation that he is amongst. And that in many ways now he wishes he wasn't. There's the challenge. How long shall I put up with you? I've had enough. That's the heavy-heartedness, really, I suppose, of the Lord Jesus as he himself expresses it in this 19th verse here. And so then he himself, instead of joining in the discussion over why nothing can be done, where he does something. And he gets the boy he gets the father to bring the son, and immediately the devil, the enemy, sees who and what it's up against. Again, the holiness of God, the greatness and the goodness of God. And the demon knows that its time is up, and manifests itself with this convulsion, this foaming at the mouth. The demon responds and reacts immediately, even to the very presence of Jesus, because once again, as we've seen before, he knows that Jesus isn't here to talk about or talk around him or it, but that Jesus is here to chase him out, and make the boy well. Which, after a short consultation, is precisely what Jesus does do. But first of all, as I say, giving the greatest, the greater diagnosis. Because it's not just a question of epileptics or demon-possessed or whoever in society. The problem is obviously with the society itself. A society, for example, that tends to manage every condition through drugs, as opposed to really treating and really dealing with the root causes of the different problems that there are in society. And the main problem is not believing in God, or having a very partial belief, if you can, said Jesus. When the father expressed his doubts really to Jesus rather than his belief, in saying, well, if you can do anything about it. Jesus diagnoses the Father's problem, our problem. Everything is possible to him who believes. And so that gets the reaction from the Father, well, I do believe. Please do something for me. Please help me. I do believe. That's why I'm here. But I recognize, yes, you're right, of course, I recognize my unbelief. Help me overcome my unbelief. Because that is the root cause of all our worries, all our fears, all our problems, all our sicknesses. Everything comes down to and comes back to unbelief. In the end, so Jesus chases the evil spirit out, commands him to leave, and he does, but not without having a last gasp, which knocks the boy out quite cleanly. But there's nothing wrong with him, and Jesus lifts him up safe and well. And the disciples, of course, are utterly miffed. And having been given authority by Jesus just to go and chase demons, not necessarily to pray, but just go and command them and chase them, they couldn't understand why they couldn't do anything in this case. And Jesus says to them, this kind can come out only by prayer, or it's got by prayer and fasting in the footnote in my Bible. So as I said, that was the end of our reading. And I didn't do it deliberately, but I note that the contrast here at the end of our reading, compared to the beginning of our reading, is the fruitless, pointless discussion between Jesus' disciples and those who were effectively the enemies of Jesus at this stage, at least, if not before, the teachers of the law, the contrast between fruitless, pointless discussion and the prayer which accomplishes things, the prayer which accomplishes deliverances, which accomplishes all manner of wonders, because obviously it's not the prayer that's doing so, it's the God who we are crying out to, and it's the God who we are talking to, and who we are lifting these people and these situations up to, who graciously answers and heals and delivers and saves and judges. The God who works wonders. Okay, so we leave it at that for this reading. The contrast between fruitless, pointless discussion and effective prayer. That's the big contrast we'll finish with today, and I'll see you next time.